The ship moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was humanity's first vessel capable of traveling faster than light, and it carried the hopes of an entire world. Inside, Ambassador Catherine Moore sat in her cabin, reading through her notes one more time. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. Every word, every gesture, every possible question had been practiced until it felt natural. Daniel Price, her young aide, knocked on the door and entered. He was nervous. Catherine could see it in the way he kept touching his collar. "We arrive in 2 hours," Daniel said. "The captain wants to know if you need anything." Catherine shook her head. "Just some quiet." "And Daniel, stop worrying. We have done everything we can. Whatever happens next is out of our hands." Daniel nodded but did not look convinced. He left her alone with her thoughts. The Galactic Concord had existed for 12,000 years. It was a union of over 400 different species, all working together under one government. They controlled thousands of star systems and had technology that made human achievements look like children's toys. When humanity finally discovered how to travel between stars, they sent a message into space announcing their existence. The Concord had responded with coordinates and an invitation to present themselves before the High Council. Catherine had been chosen because she was calm under pressure. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat, solving conflicts between nations that hated each other. But this was different. This was not about one country talking to another. This was about an entire species asking to join a community of aliens. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a planet called Velis Prime. Catherine looked out the window and felt her breath catch in her throat. The planet was covered in cities that glowed with soft blue light. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Massive stations floated in orbit, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Beautiful," Daniel whispered beside her. Catherine did not respond. She was thinking about what it meant. All of this had been built while humans were still learning to make fire. The Concorde had been traveling between stars when her ancestors were painting on cave walls. How could humanity ever hope to be seen as equals? Their ship was guided to a landing platform outside the council chambers. Catherine stepped out into air that smelled strange and felt too thin. Alien guards escorted them through corridors made of materials she could not identify. The walls seemed to pulse with energy. The floor was warm beneath her feet. The council chamber was enormous. It was shaped like a bowl, with seats rising in circles toward a distant ceiling. Hundreds of aliens sat watching as Catherine walked to the center of the room. She saw creatures with scales and creatures with fur. She saw beings made of what looked like living crystal and others that seemed to be clouds of gas held together by invisible forces. Some had dozens of eyes. Others had none. At the highest point of the chamber sat the High Speaker, a creature named Rexthal. It was tall and thin, with a body covered in hard plates like armor. 6 arms extended from its torso, and its head was dominated by 2 large compound eyes that reflected Catherine's image 1,000 times over. Catherine took a deep breath and began her presentation. She spoke about human history, about the wars and the peace that followed. She talked about human art, human science, human dreams. Holographic images appeared behind her, showing Earth in all its beauty. Blue oceans, green forests, cities that sparkled at night. She spoke for nearly an hour. When she finished, she felt drained but hopeful. She had given everything she had. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a sound began to spread through the room. It took Catherine a few seconds to understand what she was hearing. They were laughing. Not all of them, but enough. Dozens of species were making sounds that could only be amusement. Some were clicking. Others were humming. A few were literally vibrating with what had to be laughter. Rexdale raised one of its arms, and the chamber fell quiet. "You misunderstand," the High Speaker said. Its voice was translated by a small device that made it sound flat and empty. "We are not refusing your application. We are declining to acknowledge that it exists." Catherine felt something cold settle in her stomach. "I do not understand. Your world sits in what we call a quarantine sector," Rexdale explained. "The space around your system is filled with dangerous phenomena. Your star is unstable. Your planet is prone to disasters. And your species has existed for a very short time. You are young. You are fragile. The cost of bringing you into the Concord would be far greater than any benefit you could provide." Catherine stood very still. "So you are rejecting us because of where we live?" "We are rejecting you because you are not worth the effort," Rexdale replied. There was no cruelty in the words, no emotion at all. It was simply a statement of fact, like saying water was wet or fire was hot. "Return to your world. Live your short lives. Do not contact us again. In a few thousand years, if your species still exists, you may try once more." The chamber began to empty. Aliens were leaving, already forgetting about the small creatures from the dangerous corner of the galaxy. Catherine watched them go. Daniel stood beside her, his face pale with shock. "What do we do?" he asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Catherine did not answer immediately. She was looking at Rexdale, who had not moved from its seat. The High Speaker stared back at her with those compound eyes, waiting for her to leave like a good, obedient child. Catherine smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had just made a decision that would change everything. "We leave," she said calmly. "We go home. And then what?" Catherine turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the emptying chamber, loud and steady and unafraid. "Then we show them exactly how wrong they are." Daniel hurried to catch up with her. Behind them, Rexdale watched the humans leave. The High Speaker felt something strange, a small tickle of doubt that had no logical reason to exist. These creatures were nothing. They would return to their little world and live their little lives and be forgotten. And yet, as the doors closed behind them, Rexdale could not shake the feeling that something important had just happened. Something that would not be forgotten for a very long time. Catherine Moore returned to Earth as a failure. That was how the news channels described it. They used words like humiliation and disaster and rejection. Politicians argued about who was to blame. Some said they should never have reached out to aliens in the first place. Others said Catherine had not tried hard enough. The whole world seemed to be drowning in disappointment and shame, but Catherine did not feel ashamed. She felt angry, and anger, she knew, could be a very useful thing. 3 months after returning home, she stood before the leaders of every major nation on Earth. They had gathered in a secure building in Geneva, away from cameras and reporters. The room was plain and small, with a single round table and uncomfortable chairs. Catherine preferred it that way. This was not a meeting for speeches and grand gestures. This was a meeting for decisions. "They laughed at us," she said simply. "They called us worthless. They told us to go home and wait a few thousand years. So now we have a choice. We can sit here feeling sorry for ourselves, or we can prove them wrong." Admiral Christopher Blake was the first to speak. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. "Prove them wrong. How? We have one ship that can travel faster than light. One. They have thousands." "For now," Catherine replied. "But we learned a lot from that one trip. We saw their technology. We watched how their ships moved. Our scientists have already started working on improvements." A woman at the end of the table leaned forward. Her name was Dr. Patricia Wang, and she was the head of the Global Space Research Program. Catherine is right. The Concorde's technology is advanced, but it is not magic. They have simply had more time to develop it. With enough resources and focus, we could close that gap. How long? Asked the President of the United States. Patricia hesitated. 20 years. Maybe 15 if we work together without fighting over credit and control. The room fell silent. 20 years was a long time. Many of the people in this room would not live to see the results. But Catherine saw something in their eyes, something that had not been there before the rejection. She saw determination. The Concorde made a mistake, Catherine said. They assumed we would accept their decision and go away quietly. They do not understand humans. We do not give up. We do not stay quiet. And we do not forget when someone laughs at us. The vote was unanimous. Every nation agreed to pool their resources. Every government promised to put aside old conflicts and work toward a single goal. It was the first time in human history that the entire species had truly united behind one purpose. They called the plan the walking away. Over the next 3 years, the world transformed. Factories that had once made weapons now produced spacecraft parts. Universities that had competed with each other now shared research freely. The best minds from every country worked side by side in massive underground facilities, protected from spies and satellites. Admiral Blake took command of the military side of the operation. He was 63 years old and had planned to retire, but the rejection had given him new purpose. He spent his days on the moon, overseeing the construction of a station that would serve as humanity's first true shipyard. We are building something that has never existed before, he told his officers one evening. They were standing on the observation deck, watching Earth rise over the lunar surface. Not just ships, not just weapons. We are building a future where no one can ever tell us we are not good enough. Captain Lisa Grant stood beside him. She was young and ambitious, the kind of officer who asked questions others were afraid to ask. Do you think the Concorde is watching us? Blake shook his head. They are not. That is both our advantage and our risk. We are so unimportant to them that they cannot be bothered to keep track of what we are doing. But that means we have no idea what they might do if they suddenly decide we are a threat, so we work fast. We work smart, Blake corrected. Speed without planning leads to disaster. We take our time, do things right, and when we are ready, we show ourselves. Not one moment before. The years passed. Humanity built ships in secret, each one better than the last. They developed new engines that could travel faster and farther than anything the Concorde had shown them. They created weapons that used principles no alien species had ever discovered. Because no alien species had ever needed to fight, the way humans had fought each other for thousands of years. But they did not only build for war. They also built for life. Massive colony ships took shape in hidden shipyards. Terraforming equipment was designed and tested on Mars. Plans were drawn up for stations that could float in the atmospheres of gas giants and habitats that could survive in the hearts of Nebulae. Catherine Moore watched it all happen. From her office in Geneva. She was getting older, her hair turning gray, her steps slowing. But her mind remained sharp, and her anger remained strong. One evening, Daniel Price came to visit her. He was no longer a nervous young aide. He was now one of the senior coordinators of the entire project, responsible for making sure all the different parts worked together. We are ahead of schedule, he told her. Dr. Wang thinks we might be ready in 12 years instead of 15. Catherine nodded slowly. Good. But remember, Daniel, this is not just about showing the Concorde what we can do. This is about building something that will last. Something our children and grandchildren can be proud of. Daniel sat down across from her. Do you ever regret going to that council chamber? Sometimes I wonder if we would have been happier not knowing. Catherine thought about it for a long moment. No, she finally said. I do not regret it. They did us a favor, though they will never understand that. They showed us exactly what the galaxy thinks of us. And they gave us the greatest gift anyone could give a species like ours. What gift? Catherine smiled, and it was the same sharp smile she had worn in the council chamber all those years ago. Something to prove. Humans have always needed something to prove. Now we have the biggest challenge in our history, and we are going to meet it. Outside her window, the sun was setting over Geneva. But in shipyards across the solar system, the lights never went out. Humanity was building its future, one ship at a time, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. 7 years after the rejection, a Concorde patrol ship floated through the empty space near the Kepler Transit Corridor. It was a routine mission, the kind that board officers hated because nothing ever happened. Lieutenant Commander Zixnal sat in his command chair, staring at screens that showed nothing but stars and darkness. Zixnal was a member of the Sethrak species, a reptilian race known for their patience and attention to detail. His scales were a dull green, and his yellow eyes rarely blinked. He had served in the Concorde military for 40 years and had never seen combat. The galaxy was peaceful. The Concorde controlled everything worth controlling. What was there to fight about? Commander, said one of his officers, a young Sethrak named Krelvax. The sensors are showing something strange. Zixnal turned slowly. Define strange. Multiple contacts bearing 274. They appeared suddenly, without any warning. I cannot identify the energy signature. Zixnal felt his scales tighten, an automatic response to danger. He moved to the sensor station and looked at the readings himself. What he saw made no sense. Hundreds of ships. They had appeared from nowhere, using a method of faster-than-light travel that the Concorde did not recognize. They were moving in perfect formation, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. And they were heading directly toward Concorde space. Open a channel, Zixnal ordered. His voice was calm, but his claws were digging into the edge of the console. The communication screen flickered to life, showing a human face. It was a woman with short, dark hair and calm brown eyes. She wore a uniform that Zixnal did not recognize. Dark blue with silver markings on the shoulders. Concorde Patrol 7. This is Commander Rachel Hayes of the United Earth Exploration Fleet, the woman said. Her voice was polite but firm. We are passing through this region on our way to unclaimed territory beyond your borders. We mean you no harm and ask only that you allow us to continue without interference. Zixnal stared at the screen. His mind was struggling to process what he was hearing. The humans. The species that had been rejected and sent home. The worthless creatures from the dangerous corner of the galaxy. You are the excluded species, he finally said. You are not permitted to operate vessels in this sector. The human woman smiled slightly. It was not a threatening expression, but it was not friendly either. With respect, Commander, you excluded us from your Concorde. You did not exclude us from the galaxy. We have as much right to explore and expand as any other species. We are simply exercising that right. Where did you get these ships? Zixnal demanded. Our records show that you had only one vessel capable of faster-than-light travel. That was 7 years ago, Commander Hayes replied. We have been busy since then. Zixnal looked at the sensor readings again. 347 ships. Some were small and fast, clearly designed for scouting. Others were massive, their purpose unclear. And in the center of the formation was a ship larger than anything Zixnal had ever seen outside of the Concorde's own capital fleet. You cannot have built all of this in 7 years, he said. It is impossible. Commander Hayes shrugged. Perhaps your definition of impossible needs updating. Now, are you going to let us pass, or do we need to have a longer conversation? Zixinal was a military officer. He understood power. He understood the difference between a fight you could win and a fight that would destroy you. His patrol ship was armed, but it was alone. Against a fleet this size, he would not last 30 seconds. "You may pass," he said stiffly, "but I will be reporting this to High Command." "Please do," Commander Hayes replied. "And when you write your report, make sure to mention that we were polite. We would hate for there to be any misunderstandings." The communication ended. Zixinal watched as the human fleet moved past his position, their ship sliding through space with a grace and speed that made his own vessel look clumsy and slow. It took nearly an hour for all of them to pass. When the last ship disappeared into the distance, Zixinal sat down heavily in his chair. "Commander?" Krelvax asked nervously. "What do we do?" Zixinal did not answer immediately. He was thinking about what he had just witnessed. The Concord had dismissed humanity as worthless. They had laughed at the human ambassador and sent her home like a child who had wandered into an adult conversation. And now, 7 years later, the humans had built a fleet that rivaled anything in this sector. "We send a message to High Command," Zixinal finally said. "Priority 1. And we pray that someone with more authority than me knows what to do about this." The message reached the High Council 3 days later. Rex Thel, the High Speaker, read it in the privacy of the council chambers. The old insectoid sat motionless for a long time, staring at the words on the screen. 347 ships. Unknown technology. Heading for unclaimed space. Rex Thel remembered the human ambassador, the small woman who had stood before the council and spoken about her species with such passion. Rex Thel remembered the laughter that had filled the chamber. Rex Thel remembered dismissing the humans as if they were insects to be ignored. "Councilor Miravesh," Rex Thel said quietly. A blue-skinned alien stepped forward from the shadows. "I want you to begin a full investigation into human activities. Use every resource available. I want to know everything they have done since the rejection." Miravesh looked surprised. "High Speaker, the humans are a minor species. Is this really necessary?" Rex Thel turned to look at the counselor. For the first time in centuries, there was something like uncertainty in those ancient compound eyes. "I made an error," Rex Thel said. "I underestimated them. I will not make that mistake again." The investigation began immediately. What it revealed would shake the Galactic Concord to its core. The humans had not simply built ships. They had built a civilization. In 7 years, they had colonized 3 star systems that the Concord had considered worthless. They had established trade routes through space that Concord ships refused to enter. They had made contact with species that the Concord had never bothered to notice. And they had done it all without asking permission from anyone. Rex Thel read the reports in silence, feeling something cold and unfamiliar growing in the center of its chest. It took the old alien a long time to recognize the emotion dot. It was fear. 15 years after the rejection, the Galactic Concord held an emergency session. It was only the 3rd emergency session in the last 1,000 years. The first had been called when a massive asteroid threatened a core world. The second had been during a brief civil war between 2 founding species. This 3rd session was called because of humanity. The council chamber was full. Representatives from over 400 species had traveled from across the galaxy to attend. The air buzzed with nervous energy as delegates whispered to each other in dozens of different languages. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How had this happened? Councilor Miravesh stood at the center of the chamber, presenting the latest intelligence reports. The blue-skinned alien looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a tremor in her hands. In the past 8 years, the human stellar compact has expanded to include 47 colonized worlds, Miravesh said. Her voice echoed in the vast space. They have established permanent stations in over 200 star systems. Their population outside Earth has grown to nearly 3 billion individuals. A murmur rippled through the chamber. 3 billion. It was a tiny number compared to the Concorde's trillions, but the speed of growth was terrifying. Their technology continues to advance at an alarming rate, Miravesh continued. They have developed propulsion systems that are faster than our standard drives. Their weapons use principles that our scientists are still struggling to understand. And their ability to terraform hostile environments exceeds anything we have achieved. A delegate from the Vranxi species raised one of its tentacles. How is this possible? They were nothing 15 years ago. A single ship. A handful of scientists. How could they have advanced so quickly? Miravesh hesitated before answering. We believe it is because of how they developed. The humans evolved on a dangerous world. They faced constant threats from their environment, from disease, from each other. This created a species that is extremely adaptable and extremely motivated. When we rejected them, we gave them a common enemy. They united in ways we did not think possible. They are not our enemies, another delegate protested. We simply declined their membership application. Try telling them that, Miravesh replied grimly. Our scouts have made contact with species that have joined the Human Stellar Compact. The Vranxi, the Terali, the Kaveth. All of them were minor races that the Concorde ignored. The humans offered them partnership, technology sharing, mutual defense. They built something that we never bothered to build, a coalition of the overlooked. Vrextheil had been silent throughout the presentation. The high speaker sat in the highest seat, watching with compound eyes that revealed nothing. But when Miravesh finished, Vrextheil finally spoke. Show them the trade figures. Miravesh nodded and changed the display. Numbers appeared in the air, glowing softly against the darkness of the chamber. Human trade routes now carry 12% of all commerce in this quadrant of the galaxy, Miravesh explained. They offer better prices, faster delivery, and access to goods that cannot be found anywhere else. Several Concorde member worlds have begun trading with them despite our official policy of non-engagement. This is unacceptable, a delegate shouted. We should send a fleet. Show them their place, and then what? Vrextheil asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. We send a fleet. We destroy some of their ships. Perhaps we even destroy some of their colonies. And then we have a war. A war against a species that learned to fight before they learned to write. A species that spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. Is that what you want? No one answered. Vrextheil rose slowly from the seat. The old insectoid moved with difficulty now, joints creaking and plates scraping against each other. But the voice was still strong. I made a mistake 15 years ago. I looked at the humans and saw weakness. I saw a young species from a dangerous corner of the galaxy, and I assumed they would fail. I did not consider what that dangerous corner might have taught them. I did not consider what failure would mean to creatures who had never known anything else. Vrextheil paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled delegates. The humans did not fail. They adapted. They grew. They built something that we never imagined possible. And now we must decide what to do about it. What can we do? Miravesh asked. They've made it clear that they do not want our membership. They do not need our approval. They are building their own future, with or without us. Vrextheil was quiet for a long moment. When the high speaker finally answered, there was something in the voice that no one had ever heard before. It sounded almost like respect. We watch. We wait. And we hope that when the time comes for us to speak with them again, they are willing to listen. The session ended without any resolutions. The Concorde, for the first time in 12,000 years, had encountered a problem they could not solve through force or diplomacy. They could only wait and see what humanity would do next. Far away, in the central offices of the Human Stellar Compact, Admiral Christopher Blake received reports of the emergency session. He was 88 years old now, using a cane to walk and reading glasses to see. But his mind was as sharp as ever. "They are scared," said Captain Lisa Grant, now Admiral Grant, standing beside him. "The great Galactic Concorde is scared of us." Blake nodded slowly. "Good. Fear can lead to wisdom. Or it can lead to desperate action. We need to be ready for both. What do you recommend?" Blake looked out the window of his office. The view showed a massive station, one of dozens that humanity had built in the years since the rejection. Ships moved around it in endless streams, carrying goods and people to every corner of human space. "We keep building," Blake said. "We keep growing. We keep proving that we are not what they thought we were. And eventually, when they are ready to see us as equals, we will be there. And if they never see us as equals..." Blake smiled, a thin expression that held no warmth. "Then we will be there anyway. And they will have to accept that whether they like it or not." The human expansion continued, and the galaxy, slowly but surely, began to change. 25 years after the rejection, a small human ship approached Velis Prime. It was not a warship or a colony vessel. It was a diplomatic transport, elegant and fast, carrying a delegation of 3 people. Catherine Moore sat in the passenger cabin, watching the planet grow larger through the window. She was 71 years old now. Her hair had turned completely white, and lines marked her face like the pages of a history book. But her eyes were the same, sharp and intelligent and burning with something that had never faded. Daniel Price sat across from her. He was no longer the nervous young aide who had accompanied her on that first mission. He was now the Secretary of External Affairs for the Human Stellar Compact, one of the most powerful positions in human government. But in moments like this, he still felt like that young man standing in an alien chamber, wondering what would happen next. The third member of their delegation was Marcus Flynn, a young man of 30 who had been only 5 years old when Catherine first visited this world. He had grown up in a transformed humanity, one that reached across dozens of star systems and counted billions of citizens. To him, the rejection was not a personal memory, but a historical event, like a war that ended before he was born. "Are you nervous?" Marcus asked Catherine. Catherine smiled. "No, I have waited 25 years for this moment. Nervousness would be a waste of energy." The ship landed on the same platform where Catherine had landed a quarter century ago. The same alien guards escorted them through the same corridors. But everything felt different now. The walls that had seemed so impressive before now looked ordinary. The technology that had amazed her no longer held any mystery. Humanity had caught up. In some areas, they had surpassed. The council chamber was full, just as it had been before. But the atmosphere had changed completely. There was no laughter this time. There were no dismissive gestures or bored expressions. Every delegate watched the human delegation with careful attention, trying to read meaning in every step, every glance, every breath. Rex still, speaker's seat. The old insectoid had aged badly in the past 25 years. The plates that covered its body were cracked and faded. Its limbs trembled with constant small movements. But those compound eyes still held intelligence, and something else that Catherine recognized immediately: regret. "Ambassador Moore," Rexthal said. The translator made the words sound formal and cold, but Catherine could hear the effort behind them. "You requested this audience. The Concorde has granted it. Please, speak." Catherine walked to the center of the chamber and stood exactly where she had stood all those years ago. She took a moment to look around, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as she could. Some looked away. Others held her gaze. A few nodded slightly, acknowledging something that words could not express. 25 years ago, I came here with hope, Catherine began. Her voice was clear and strong, filling the vast space without effort. I believed that the galaxy would welcome us. I believed that we could join your community and learn from your wisdom. I was naive. She paused, letting the words settle. You rejected us. You laughed at us. You told us that we were not worth the effort. And then you sent us home, expecting us to accept your judgment and disappear quietly into the darkness. Vrextheel's limbs twitched, but the high speaker said nothing. We did not disappear, Catherine continued. We did not accept your judgment. Instead, we used your rejection as fuel. We built ships. We colonized worlds. We created a civilization that spans 47 star systems and continues to grow every day. We found species that you had ignored and offered them partnership. We developed technology that your scientists still cannot understand. We did everything you said was impossible, and we did it without your help, without your approval, and without your permission. The chamber was absolutely silent. Catherine could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Now you have invited us back. Now you wanted to talk. Now, after 25 years of watching us grow from nothing into something you cannot ignore, you are ready to treat us as equals. Catherine smiled. It was the same smile she had worn when she walked out of this chamber a quarter century ago. Sharp and knowing and utterly without fear. The Human Stellar Compact is willing to establish formal relations with the Galactic Concord. We will negotiate trade agreements. We will discuss cultural exchanges. We will consider mutual defense treaties. All of this is on the table, and we will approach these discussions in good faith. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made every delegate lean forward. The membership in your Concord? That offer is permanently and irrevocably declined. A gasp rippled through the chamber. Several delegates began to speak at once, their translators creating a chaos of overlapping voices. Vrexthil raised a trembling limb for silence. You would refuse us? The high speaker asked. After everything that has happened? Catherine nodded. We would. We do. The Galactic Concord had its chance to include us, and it chose to laugh instead. We have built something better on our own. Something that values every species, regardless of how young or fragile or seemingly worthless they appear. We will not abandon what we have built to join an organization that treats others the way you treated us. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at Vrexthil one last time. You may return to your worlds. Continue your ancient traditions. Rule your thousands of systems. But understand this. The galaxy is changing. It is no longer yours alone. And if you want to be part of the future that is coming, you will have to earn it. Catherine walked out of the chamber. Daniel and Marcus followed close behind. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space, the only sound in a room filled with 400 species struggling to understand what had just happened. Outside, the human ship waited on the landing platform. Catherine stopped at the top of the boarding ramp and looked up at the alien sky. It was filled with stars, billions of them, stretching across the darkness in an endless river of light. Did we do the right thing? Marcus asked quietly. Catherine thought about the question for a long moment. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the struggles and sacrifices, the dreams that had carried humanity through its darkest moments. We did what we had to do, she finally said. We showed them that dignity cannot be given. It must be claimed. And we claimed ours. She boarded the ship. The doors closed behind her. And as the vessel lifted off from Velis Prime, Catherine Moore allowed herself one small moment of satisfaction 20-5 years ago. She had walked away with nothing but anger and a promise. Now she was walking away with everything humanity had ever dreamed of achieving. The galaxy had tried to exclude them. Humanity had simply built a better galaxy of their own. And that, Catherine thought as the stars blurred around her, was the most human thing of all.